Welcome to Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lottie and the host of this podcast. I'm a physician, medical intuitive, evidential psychic medium, international keynote speaker, and author of Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, which won first place in the category of spiritual leadership in August 2021 from Living Now Book Awards. This award recognizes truly world-changing books that contribute to positive global change. The inspiration for this podcast came from my own life experiences. As I have journeyed through life, it has taught me that we're part of a greater divine web of interconnectedness. I have walked the path of illness, healing, and transformation. After 2 near-death experiences, I became clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, and was guided to attend medical school at the age of 54. We will be meeting with many different types of doctors, healers, as well as spiritual leaders, educators, and other inspiring souls in this podcast. It is my hope that you will gain information and create a path to healing your own life physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and bridge the gap between science and soul. If you are a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com. To stay up to date on future episodes and to help us reach a larger audience, remember to subscribe, review, and share this podcast, as well as subscribing to my newsletter at divinespiritualessence.com. Welcome to Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lottie and the host of this podcast. And today I am so delighted to have Jane Asher as a guest. And Jane Asher has always been a natural connector who has enjoyed a successful career in media and the music industry, most notably at major radio stations in San Diego and Santa Barbara, and Virgin Records based out of Chicago. Several years ago, she stepped away from terrestrial radio when Empower Radio reached out and asked her to create a show regarding her passion. And the Next Room podcast was born. She interviews professionals and practitioners from diverse backgrounds about death, dying, grief, beliefs, afterlife, and cultural traditions surrounding the journey we must all ultimately make. The Next Room is also the official podcast of the beautiful Dying Expo. Her book, The Next Room, is a story transcending space and time of a relationship between mother and daughter that grew stronger through death. Written together by initially enlisting interpretation through a psychic medium, The Next Room takes us on a daughter's journey through learning eternal life lessons on forgiveness, grief, grace, gratitude, and the limitless love of all, God. So welcome, Jane. I'm so excited to have you as a guest today.
Dr. Lottie, the pleasure is all mine. Science with Soul. You know, when I first met you and heard about your podcast, I just love the science and the soul portion of it. I love how they intersect. And I think more so now than ever, it's becoming so abundantly clear that it's sort of the same world. You know, we're living in this same beautiful connection. So it's really nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Oh, you're so welcome. You have a book that is literally hot off the press. It was just released, and it is called The Next Room. Now, can you tell us why is it called The Next Room?
Yeah, great story. I have this darling friend. Her name is Budgie, and she and I used to sit and have these really deep philosophical, spiritual conversations. We didn't waste a lot of time on the weather, although I do like to discuss the weather. Budge would call me and we would have these really nice long chats, and we would talk about what comes next. What comes next after you have this, experience as a human being on the planet. And she gave me the title of this because for some reason, heaven's great and I get it, but sometimes it's a little bit too fluffy for people to wrap their heads around. And so Budge said to me, she goes, Janie, I think we're here and then we just go into the next room. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. Do you mind if I use that for the name of my podcast? She's like, no, have at it. And what's great is that there's an old piece of poetry. Is it Henry David Scott? I hope Henry David Holland. Anyway, he does this beautiful piece that's at a lot of funerals, and it talks about I'm not dead. I'm just merely in the next room. Speak with me. Still, call me by the same name, laugh and have the same jokes we've always had. And he uses reference to the next room. And so that's kind of how the whole thing started with the podcast first. And then, of course, now the book is of the same name.
So tell us about this book. It is a very special book, and how it came about that you wrote this book.
Wow. Okay.
Who is it that's in the next room?
Well, there's a lot of people in the next room, but my mother crossed over on September 31st. And if you're, wait a minute, there's not 31 days in September. It was actually October 1st, but she had given me this calendar every year since I was a young woman. I moved from Michigan out to California. She didn't want me to lose my connection to the family. So she would give me this, just those standard Hallmark calendars that hung on the back of our door. And in each little box, she would have every single birthday of every family member, people that married into the family, anniversaries, any special dates that I needed to know because she wanted me to keep my connection with the family. And she just gifted me that the very first time I moved out to California when I was 22. And every Christmas, she would give me a brand new calendar for the upcoming year. And I loved it. I treasured them. I just thought it was the coolest thing. And of course, a not so subtle reminder to stay in touch with my very large, boisterous family. Well, the year that she crossed, which was 2010, she had given me the calendar that Christmas before, hanging on the back of the kitchen door. And the day that she left to go into the next room, my sister Lynn had called to let me know that she passed. And, just mind-blowing day. But I immediately couldn't stop. I couldn't feel my grief. So I went and I grabbed the calendar off the back of the door and I started calling the airlines. I'm like, I got to get home from San Diego, got to get to my dad in Michigan, got to go see my siblings. I just couldn't even stop to feel the grief. It was like I was on this weird autopilot. And as I'm flipping back and forth through the calendar, I'm talking to Delta Airlines and I'm like, okay, it's the 31st. I want to fly on, the 1st. And they're like, no, Mrs. Asher, it's actually October 1st. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's right here on the calendar. It's September 31st. So that's the first time that we knew that, she had given me that calendar. And I just feel like it was just this bizarre sign from her that she didn't really actually leave because the day doesn't exist, right? And that's what my husband likes to tell me. He's like, your mom didn't really go. She just she slipped into the next room on a day that doesn't really exist. And so that's kind of how the whole thing got started. So
I love that story. It is so great. And of course, she's the one who gave you the calendar, which makes it even more special.
Absolutely.
She's like, that day that doesn't exist. That's my day. I know.
It's just wild. And so, like I wrote that story about that, sort of like just a cathartic, get it off my chest. I wrote this story about September 31st and the pain that was connected and everything about the calendar. And then I was like, I always wanted to write it. Like ever since I was a young girl, I thought, oh, I'm going to write books. I'm going to write fiction, or I'm going to do this or that. And then literally after she died, I was like, I just felt compelled to write a story about my unique, very close connection with my mom. But at the time, I didn't know, A, how to write a book, B, really, I'd never written anything other than journals. I've got journals that are packed full of gratitude and dreams and that kind of stuff, but literally had no idea. So I just started writing. I just was writing, and I would put things in this box, this angel box, and mostly it was writing in journals. And I kept telling people, "Oh, I'm writing a book," but I really wasn't. I was just yakking about it. I was saying I was writing a book, but I really didn't get focused about writing the book until some things started aligning. And then I'm like, you know what? I need to tell this story. I need to express the connection that I have and the fact that my mother is clearly reaching out from the next room and would like to do this with me. And that kind of started the whole thing going, where I'm like, am I crazy, to think that I can write this book with this person that is not here physically here to co-author it? But as I started doing it, I thought, no, this isn't crazy at all. This is really quite natural, and it feels right. And messages were coming in and downloads were happening. And it just, one thing rolled into the next, and it rolled into the next. And all of a sudden, son of a gun, I'm writing a book, and I love it. It's for me. Like a lot of people, I think they set out and they're like, oh, I want to write a book and have a bestseller. And yeah, that's all well and good. And that would be a quality problem to have. But I truly felt like doing this was an absolutely cathartic year and a half, or actually took 10 years to actually write it and get it all down. But the last year and a half, it was really focused. It was like a therapy session. It was the best therapy, and I didn't have to pay for it. And my therapist was my laptop. So it was really good for me. I got a lot of stuff out, a lot of tears, a lot of dark chocolate, a lot of coffee.
I love it. So when you wrote this book, you were talking about how you were getting messages and downloads. So when you're sitting there writing, did you feel like you were actually the writer, or was it what your mom told you to write, or was it sometimes you would know what to write and sometimes you would get a download, more like a collaboration? Or you feel like it was guided more by her to tell you what to write?
Yes and no. Like when it started, I really wasn't sure what was going on. And so it was kind of all in pieces. It felt like a puzzle that was across 10 years, like 2 laptops and 10 years of memories and gratitude journals and all of this stuff. And as I started pulling it together, I could see that it was becoming a cohesive story. And so I was thinking, okay, I'm going to write part 1. Part 1's going to be about me growing up and the connection I have with this extraordinary woman, as well as my family and my dad. And then part 2 is going to be me meeting this unbelievable psychic who is a dear friend of mine now, from Santa Barbara. And then part 3 will be me translating the messages that my mother was giving to my friend, the psychic, in the book. And I have all the recordings. And so I'll just transcribe. I'll ask questions. Pam will listen to my questions. My mother is there as well. And then my mother would answer me. And so that was part 3. So that was kind of the total book. And then I had a session with Pam and my mother. And I said, okay, I don't need any more questions answered. I just need to know, am I on target? I have part 1, part 2, part 3. And Pam was like, okay, I'll tell her, Betty. Okay. She said, yes, she really likes what you're doing. Part 1, part 2, part 3. However, you're going to have a part 4, and you need a prologue and an epilogue. And this isn't just the only book. There's going to be more, depending on how busy you get, because you're going to go on a book tour. And she had some other things to say. So I'm sitting here going, what? Part 4? What? Who's going to do that? And then Pam said, your mother is telling me that you do not need me. You can hear her. You've been hearing her. You communicate with her all the time. If you just get quiet and you trust and you expand without fear, you will be able to channel this and do it without me. So that's kind of what brought us to part 4, which it scared me because here I am, I'm thinking people are going to think I flipped my dome doily. Here I am. they understand intellectually psychics, because who doesn't love a good psychic or a psychic medium? And they're all over and people are super intuitive. But here I am writing, getting to this part with the psychic. And then all of a sudden, part 4, I'm like, all right, here we go. So that part was 100%. I can't even tell you how it happened. All I know is that every day I would open myself up and pray. I would walk in the morning and things were coming to me. Then I'd get out here in the studio and I would light a candle and I would talk to my mother and I would say, I don't know what we're doing here, but I'm just going to open up my laptop. And the first time I did it, and after I said my prayer, she was coming through with such enormous clarity that it was frightening. Like I couldn't stop. And I'm not a great typist. I'm like a henpecker, but I was like, it was just coming in. And that's what happened. So every day, it was one long document, part 4. Every day, at the end of the day, I mean, I wrote all day long and I was usually in the studio. I was out here. I'd be crying. My husband, he'd open the door and I'd go, not now. And then he'd just put a square of chocolate down, and then he would leave. But what would happen is I would write. And then the next day I would read back and I didn't remember a lot of it. I'm like, what? Wow, that's really good, Mom. Thank you. Like, that's crazy good. Like it was almost as if I was reading. Well, I was reading something that she was sending through me, but at the time I didn't even realize it. And then I just kept going. Like I would open up my laptop and I'd click on the same document. And then friends were saying, well, one really good friend said, you really should, back that up. What happens if you lose it? And all that kind of crazy stuff. Cause I don't know how to write a book. So then I'm like, I've got it on thumb drives and I'm emailing it to myself. It was crazy. But it eventually ended up part 4. I broke it down into all these short chapters because I love to read short chapters. But it was written as one huge cohesive. Every day I'd open up and Mom was there and I was there and I would just have a thought like, oh, today I want to talk to her about reincarnation. And then she would say, great topic. And it would just come in. So that's kind of how it all came to be. And it's kind of nutty because I'm just this normal. I mean, I think I'm kind of normal. I'm not some spiritual guru. I don't sit people down and say, ooh, let me tell you about you at all. I don't predict the future. I've been very intuitive my whole life and very connected to my mother. And I just think that I was ready to hear what she had to say. And I also believe that she really wanted me to do this and it was meant to be shared. And it's not for everybody. I do know that. And that's okay. I'm okay with it. I don't have any attachment to it. Whatever happens with it will happen with it. And the right people will find it. And the people that need to read it will read it. And those that don't want to read it or read it and go, this is a crock, that's fine too. It's all good. It doesn't really matter.
I love it. And when you're talking about downloads and messages coming through from your mother, do you have any specific message that came through when you were writing that you can share?
Yeah, she told me so many. The one that I remember from the very beginning is she said, expand without fear. Expand to the greater awareness. Open yourself up to receive. And don't worry about trying to make it fit like Cinderella with stuffing your foot into a shoe. Don't worry about that. You just need to let it flow. She was talking about like a hose and how if you squeeze the hose, then the water can't get through. She said, I just need to let it flow. She said, be barefoot, be wildly open to receiving what is coming through and stop running it through your head. For the love of all things holy, just open up and let it come. Because she said, I have a tendency to get stuck in my head. And I do have that that ego attached. I've been on the radio for 35, 40 years. And, that thought will cross my mind like, oh, all of my radio friends are going to think I'm crazy, and she's like, so what? That doesn't matter. This is who you are. You are stepping into your authentic self. So you must expand without fear. I think that was one of the big ones that I really got. And I write that down a lot. Expand without fear.
I love it. I love the description of that too, to expand without fear. Working as a medium and training as a medium in England, that is the first thing we learn, is to just relax. Because the more fun you have and the more you're thinking that you're really just playing some game and having a good time, the more you're going to be able to connect to the spirit world. Right. And it's when we tense up and start analyzing everything that, right, we're creating these little blocks for ourselves. So I love that that was one of the messages that you received from your mother.
Yeah, thank you.
And I want to talk a little bit. You mentioned before the angel box. Yes. What is the angel box?
Boy, if I could reach it right now, I'd pull it out and show you. I got this really cool, it looks like a hope chest almost. It's about this yay big, couple feet, and it has a rounded top, and it has little purple and gold angels all over it. And it says hope and love and joy. And I got it just pretty much to collect all the stuff that I had been writing, and all the, like, my mother was a really great writer, and she would always, because I live so far away, I was a recipient of so many love letters from her that my other 5 siblings really didn't get, because they saw her all the time. So they got to be with her and sit with her and have a Bloody Mary in her living room, where I'm 2,400 miles away. So I have all these beautiful letters from her, and I never threw one away. Anytime I got a card from her or a letter, it went in the angel box. So I have all of her correspondence in there, and I just started collecting things. Little did I know that the stuff that was going in there would end up in here. So it just became kind of like a catch-all holding place where I would put things, like the letter to my sister Lynn. My sister Lynn passed away about 6 years after my mom, and I'm on the airplane, and I'm flying back from her funeral, and I am so distraught. And I mean, I am weighed down with so much pain. I had to say goodbye to my just big powerhouse of a sister, and I'm crying on the plane. It's horrible. And I have to write, and I can't find anything to write on, which is really weird because I always have journals, but I didn't have one for some reason. So I just started writing on the back of my boarding pass, and I wrote my sister Lynn a letter, a week after she was gone, and she gave me a lightning bolt of a message. And that letter, I have the original on the Delta boarding pass. It went in the angel box. And then the little pink notebook, which was the whole time my mother was in the hospital, I was, writing in this little pink notebook, and I was like stalking the doctors and writing down my mother's blood pressure and everything they would say about her condition. I was taking notes in this little pink notebook. So there's a lot of pain in that little pink notebook. And I just threw it in the angel box. And I thought, someday I'm going to need that. And thankfully, I did write all that down, because the book is really accurate, especially that chapter, because I kept notes. I kept notes about everything that was going on in my life, and the just anguish and pain. So that little angel box, looks are deceiving. It's not that pleasant. You open it up, and there's an awful lot of pain in that angel box.
I love how you kept everything, and you just had this intuition that someday I'm going to need this.
Yeah, it's wild. It really is. I mean, just sifting through it now, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the things that I wrote, because I think all along I always wanted to write. And so I would start writing pieces of things and then just throw them in there, or I would start a new journal. I have all these journals that I thought were going to be books, and maybe they will someday. I'm not sure. I've got to get it together, and because I love to write. I love pens. I love paper. It really was a shift for me to sit down and actually write in a laptop. huge shift. Because at first I'm like, I'm going to write this book longhand. And the one woman I was working with, she's a writing coach. She kind of laughed at me and she's like, yeah, that's, then what? Then you've got to transcribe it yourself, I mean, so it took a lot for me to finally shift over to writing now I love it. Now I'm like, yeah, it's all about the laptop now. So, but I still do love my pens and paper.
I love it. Can you tell us about your dad and what happened to your dad after your mom passed away, and how he established a connection with your mom in the spirit world? Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. Well, my dad, he gets the props for getting this entire party started, literally. My mom and dad were married for 62 years, best friends. It wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, but for the most part, like really a solid, loving, respectful relationship. 6 kids. I don't know how many grandkids, 13 grandkids, great grandkids, very long, extended, cool family. And my folks were like that couple, like everybody, they on the dance floor, they looked good. They held hands, they laughed. They just were really good friends. So after she exited for the next room, he was so distraught. He was just a mess. And we really thought he was going to check out after her, it was his favorite phrase for dying. Seriously, I didn't think dad was going to live another maybe 2 months. We're all like, yeah, he's done, because he was just so sad and he didn't want to navigate, or chose not to navigate, life without her. So he was majorly depressed. My big sister, Lynn, at the time called me and said, we got to get dad out of Michigan. The cold is not good for him. He doesn't have the heart to go it alone in Florida. We're going to send him out to you in San Diego. And I was like, bring it on. I'd love it. I miss him. Maybe it'll help my bruised heart. So my dad came out to spend a full month with us. And it was only maybe about a week after he had been with us. And we were sort of floating around each other. We were both so raw from our collective grief over mom. And it just was so sad. But after about a week, he said, I got the kids out the door to school. Tom was off to work. And he said, he came out and he said, I want to talk to your friend. And I said, Dad, you're going to have to be more specific. I have a lot of friends. And he goes, you know, the one that does seances and stuff. And I started laughing. I was like, oh, you mean my friend Pam? Well, I had this, still have this great friend. Her name's Pamela Osley. She's a well-known psychic medium in Santa Barbara. I only knew her as a psychic, great for career advice or love life or money or whatever, health. I had no idea that Pam could connect with the other side, because she doesn't really promote that side of her business. So I told him that. I said, Dad, she's a great woman. She can tell you if you're going to meet a new woman at church or something, if that's what you're thinking about. But I don't know what you think she can do to help you. But he was adamant that Pam had some kind of message for him. So I said, okay, let me call my friend. She makes really good money doing this. I'll see if she'll do me a favor. Of course, Pam is more than willing. She's like, absolutely, I'll talk to your dad. So I connected the two of them, gave him my landline, parked him outside with a big ice water, went in the house, kept peeking around the corner to see if he was off the phone. Finally, after close to an hour, I could see he had finally hung up. And I'm like, oh boy, what did I do? I parked my friend on with my grieving dad for this long phone call. I go outside, tears streaming down my big, beautiful dad's sun-kissed cheeks. And I'm like, oh no, Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you anymore. And he said, no, she was here. And I'm like, what? He said, your mother, she was here. Come on, we got to go listen. He gets up, he bolts across my living room, comes right out, plops here in my main studio chair. I pulled up a stool next to him. And sure enough, Pam had sent a recording of their conversation. And that's the day that my estimation of my friend's very strong gift had shifted. That's the day that I was like, And that is the day that my mother started reaching out beyond leaving all these dimes for us and coming to me in really vivid dreams and that kind of stuff. Other manifestations had happened, but that is the day. And my dad was the one that was adamant about it. And at that point, she gave through Pam, gave my dad extremely personal information. Pam had no idea of knowing anything about my mom and dad. My mom and dad didn't even have an email account. They didn't have a computer. You couldn't find out any information about my mom and dad, even if you wanted to back then. And that's the day that started. And so it was so cathartic for my dad to have that session with Pam that I gifted him every year around my mom's birthday in April. I would give him a phone call, an hour-long phone call with Pam. And it was like the best, most therapeutic thing that I could have ever done for him, because he didn't need anything. All he needed was my mother and the assurance that she was right there, just beyond in the next room, waiting for him when he was ready to go. And the other cool thing is she was 83 when she crossed. He was 83 as well. My mother kept saying through Pam, Don, you got to get it together. You're going to live a long time. And he was like, what? And she's like, yeah, you are not done. You are going to be on the other side for quite some time. So get it together, because nobody wants to be around somebody that's moping. And I mean, she was like giving him, just like she was in life, because my mother was like, she pulled no punches. She was just like, get it together. And it was awesome. And my dad lived, let's see how long, 7 years, 6 months. I mean, my dad almost lived 8 years longer. He was 91 and in fabulous health, and really got busy living too, finally, after he stopped being so sad. It was great. It was such a gift to have him for that extra, almost 8 years.
Wow. Wow, that's a wonderful story. And you mentioned that you started finding dimes. What happened?
Boy, shortly after my mother left, I didn't know they were coming from her, but I would find just random places, grocery store, church parking lot, right in the center of the living room, on the seat of my car, balanced on I would be traveling and I had a travel bag and I'd have a book in my travel bag. There'd be one dime like this when I come out to get ready to go to the airport. Come on, like just balanced, weird all the time. So I start finding these dimes, don't think anything of it, certainly didn't equate it with my mother. I was on the air at a radio station here in San Diego, and it was Halloween, and my boss at the time said, we're going to have this psychic medium, Marissa Ryan from Los Angeles. She's going to come on the air, and we're going to have her deliver messages to our listeners of their loved ones who have crossed over. And I'm like, great, love a good psychic medium. This is going to be fun, good radio. So at the time, I really wanted to just like talk to her about my mom and ask her to give me messages, but I knew she was there to do a job. And so I did not do that to her. I thought, she's here. We're paying her good money. She needs to do good radio. And it's not about me or my mother right now. At the end of the week together, we did it all week leading up to Halloween. She and I had a great exchange, and she said, Jane, I need to tell you that your mother is leaving you dimes. I don't know why. I have no idea of the significance, but just know when you do find them, they are from her. I'm like, well, son of a gun. So I go home, tell my husband, he's like, we got to start keeping them together. So I get this little velvet bag. Pretty soon he's finding them. My daughter, Betty, my son, Thomas, friends would find them on their walks along Santee Lakes and like take a picture and say, hi, Mom. Or, hi, Betty. I tell my siblings, my dad, of course, he starts finding them. So we're all finding dimes. And it was just this wonderful thing. And I have a huge collection of them. I mean, I found a 10 pence when we were over in a 10 euro in Paris, a 10 pence when we were traveling. I mean, you name it, airports. And it's always one dime. They're always alone. It's not like it's scattered like a whole handful of change. Just wild. So then the guy that was on the air, he was my producer, JJ, the night that we had, Marissa told me about the dimes. The next time I saw him was the next week. And I came in and he came in the studio to say hello to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to tell you this story. Marissa told me about the dimes and I'm collecting them now. And he said, well, are you writing it down every time you find one? And I said, no, but that's a great idea. I spin in my chair to go grab like a legal pad to write down that idea that JJ gave me. And something caught my eye way underneath the board, and there's all, equipment and stuff. And I look and I bend down and I reach one shiny dime and I picked it up and I'm laughing the whole time. And I showed it to JJ and he goes, "Hi, Mom." And things like that. So now I have this, to be honest with you, she hasn't left me one in quite some time. I was just kind of not bitching at her about it, but I just mentioned it the other day subtly to her. I'm like, what gives, Mom? You're too busy now. I guess because we now wrote a book together, you don't have to just leave me dimes anymore. But as you can hear, I have a whole collection of them. So, and I just love it. And it's just one other way of, I have hundreds. It's just another way how they can connect. They can connect with us through electronics, feathers, dimes, you name it. They can talk to us. We can hear them. It's unbelievable the way that they can connect as long as we clear the path to allow that communication and also believe it ourselves that they can indeed communicate with us. They're just, our pea brains can't see them at this point. We'll be able to see them again someday. So, and then we're going to have a lot of fun, when the time comes.
Love it. It's such a unique story, your book, with connecting with your mother in the spirit world and really co-author the whole book with her.
Yes.
What is the biggest lesson that you've learned from writing this book and connecting with your mother in the spirit world?
Boy, there's a lot, but I would say, and I do have to preface this, I pick up the book and read it almost every day. She dropped so many great lessons in my lap that being human, I'm not always good about. Okay. So, gossip for one thing, really a very destructive form of communication, and one that she said, unless you are having a conversation and it's steeped in love, it is not necessary. Even repeating information about another friend, that is gossip. You may think you're just sharing information, but it is not for you to do. She also told me all is well. We're okay. Like everybody's flipping out on the planet right now, the coronavirus and just the horribleness with politics and just the attacking and gender equality and, just social issues and racism. And there's so much negativity right now, but she just said it's not that we need to stick our head in the sand. We must be aware, but we need to spend our time in the space of goodness and grace and glory and love and really choose that wisely. Make that decision and that shift to spend our time in that greater awareness, because one day we will see that it's okay. We're all going to see that all of this, there was a reason for all of it, and it all fits together like this beautiful, you think it's all shattered in shards of glass, but then when we pull away from it, we'll see oh, that wasn't bad at all anyway. That was just moving the narrative forward. And so, like I said, I have a long way to go because I'm so human. But she keeps telling me, get out of your own way. Stop being so human. Be bold, be brave, be love, and just be that. And I catch myself all the time. I catch myself being crappy, not being a good person or thinking something, or being kind of, letting my ego get in, oh, why isn't that person buying my book? Well, that's just a piece of crap. That's just me being stupid and letting my ego get in the way. And so I just picked it up again this morning and was like, all right, Mom, I guess I didn't catch it all the first time. So I'm actually reading it to learn from her the lessons that she is imparting through the book, which sounds weird because I wrote it physically, but it's from her. it is not from me. This is from a greater perspective. I don't think like this. I wish I did. I'm trying. I'm working at it. But she's so far beyond. Her growth is so exponential and so beautiful and bold and wild and gloriously graceful. And I'm still this human, until I'm on the other side, which I'm really good here. I really want to say that out loud. I don't want to go anywhere in a hurry. I still have a lot left in me. I've got more books to write, according to her.
I love it. I love also how you're reading your own book, because what you wrote was really, some of it was just download and these messages, and you're just trying to get it all on paper.
Yes.
And then, because I had a similar experience with my book that I wrote, and I had to go back and say, wow, I wrote this, because there were certain sections that were downloads. It was still about my life, but what I had to write about it came from somewhere else. So
Yeah.
I totally understand what you're saying. And it sounds really weird to people. It would have sounded really weird to me if you
Right.
asked me, 30 years ago. I would have said, wow, that person is really weird.
Right. Exactly.
Of course they're going to know what they wrote. They wrote it.
Right.
But it is a different experience, and it, like you said, is all about just opening up and letting that information come, and we all have access to this, and it's just a matter of letting go of our ego and open up and receive those messages.
Yes. Yeah.
So I
Dr.
love
Lottie,
it.
that's so true, Dr. Lottie. I agree with you 100%. I think all of us can do this. We can all connect on a deeper level, no matter what. And we have to open up to receive, literally open up and also ask. I cannot express that enough. It's important for us to ask for it, whatever it is, whatever you would like guidance or help with. And it comes from the collective too, from what my mother said. Because I asked her if when I ask for help from a specific soul, if it is them that help me. And she said, not necessarily, because if it's not their forte, they'll step back and let someone else step in, or another soul step in that is more adept to handling that kind of thing. And she said, it comes from the collective. It comes from everywhere, which I love. She said, there's legions of souls that want these messages to come out, to let people know they have absolutely nothing to fear. Absolutely nothing to fear. There is no shame. There is no punishment. There is no burning in hell. There is none of that at all. You just plug back into this greater awareness. And yes, you will be shown things, but there's no punishment at all. Zero. That's just such a, that was people that made things up to try to keep us in line, create their rules, make them afraid. It's just, we have to expand without fear, man.
I hear you. And it's so true, because a lot of our lives are fear-based, and it starts at a very young age. And many people live in fear their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about getting over that and embracing love and gratitude.
Yes, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
So how can people find your book?
Super easy. I mean, it's available. I self-published. And so, but I didn't want to force people into the Amazon thing, because a lot of people don't bond with that, but you can get it through Amazon, because I know that it's easy and convenient and people have Prime memberships. But I also did it through Ingram Spark. So if you wanted to, for instance, if you have a Barnes and Noble membership and you want to buy it through them and save a little bit, 10%, you can do that. You can order it through Target. You can order it through a small bookstore. And if you want it autographed, you can get it directly through me, which is janeasherrainey.com, or thenextroombook.com will take you to the same spot. There's a page for the book. Just click on it and I'll ship it out for free, and I'll sign it, and my mother will sign it as well. So we're both autographing the books. It's been a lot of fun to do. And then I'll send it out from my website to you with a thank you note. Because I'm getting a huge kick out of that. I love when people order it through me. It does cost a few dollars more than Amazon just because I'm absorbing the shipping, but it's not that much. It's still under $20. So they can do it through me, or if they want it cheaper, $14.99, they can get it through Amazon or Target or wherever your favorite.
I love it. So you signed the book, but how does your mom sign it?
Oh, great story. So because my mother was a writer and I have all these wonderful love letters from her, before, we didn't even know this, but prior to her leaving the planet, she had started writing down her story as a child and all kinds of things, which is great because it's really going to lean into the next room too. But she had signed it, Betty Asher. So I have a friend that's an artist, and I said, could you take my mom's signature and then turn it into a JPEG, like, sign over it, and so that I could send it in. And then I send it into a stamp company, and I have a stamp. And so the autograph is all love, Jane. And then I make a little and then I go stamp Betty Asher. So both of us are signing it. It is her signature. My siblings are going to flip when they see it. Anyone that's ever gotten a card from my mother was known as the Hallmark Fairy. She sent people cards, friends of mine, birthday cards, anniversary cards, Christmas cards, thinking of you cards, I miss you cards, get well soon, condolence cards. I mean, and it was a lovely thing that she did. And she imparted that. One of my sisters is great with it as well, Gail. And I love doing it too. I think there's nothing greater than getting good mail, no bills.
I love it.
I do. I love it too. So I send out an awful lot of cards, and that's why I have her signature. So it's really fun that my mother, who co-authored this book with me, it was important. Her picture's on the back too, which I love.
Right.
The two of us together. Yeah. And she does have co-authoring. Her name is on the book. So it's the two of us. And Pam. Pam's a big part of this. I mean, I could not have done this without Pamela Osley, without a doubt, or my sister Lynn, or Budge, or my dad. Catching a theme here? Everyone that has helped put this together, I'm the only one that's on this side. Everyone else is in the next room. How wild is that? I love it.
It is really wild. It is fabulous. And I can't wait to finish reading it. You have an expo coming up, the Beautiful Dying Expo.
Yes.
So before we wrap this up, can you just tell us what that expo is about? And you are the official podcaster for that, The Next Room.
Yes, I am. I'm going to be broadcasting live from the main stage. So the Beautiful Dying Expo, you can go to just beautifuldyingexpo.com. It is November 12th, 13th, 14th. It is absolutely free. It is a virtual event. You can register just so we can get a head count. We're going to have Patch Adams. The real Patch Adams is going to be there. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation will be there. It is everything and anything surrounding death, dying, grief. The Green Burial Council's involved, getting your affairs in order. We have attorneys there. So if you don't have a trust or a will, and how imperative it is, or if you don't have your medical paperwork in order, it's everything that's associated with what comes next, and just getting to the point so that it is a healthy, loving conversation about this. Because a lot of people are like, oh, that's weird. It's morbid. No, it's not. It's absolutely natural. Every single one of us are going to die. So let's have fun with it. Let's have conversations. Let's get together. So it's just a beautiful event. As I mentioned, it is absolutely free. You can just wander down the old virtual hall. I'll be broadcasting live and speaking with a grief expert, Jan Warner. She has a Facebook page called Grief Speaks Out. She's got 2.4 million followers on Facebook. I'll have on Casey Gaunt, who lost his son tragically in a horrible accident, but he's part of Helping Parents Heal. I've got Sarah Bamford Seidelman. She's a shaman and an author and fantastic. Pamela Osley, who helped translate my book, will be with me. And then I'm hoping to pull Pam into my booth afterwards and have her do some free readings for people. It's just going to be a lot of fun. Just a great I know. Listen to me. Ooh, it's an expo about death, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Come one, come all. No, it really is going to be it's a beautiful event. It is the third year. We're really getting it together, and we're growing exponentially. And hopefully next year, if things are better and calm down on the planet, we can actually have a live event here in San Diego, and then keep the virtual component as well. But it'd be really nice to have keynotes and have people come and sell their books and, crystals and do drum circles and all the woo-woo side of it too. Right. So that'd be really fun.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Such a good expo, and so many different people being represented. So can you also tell us how people can find your podcast, the Next Room podcast?
Oh, sure. Same thing. JaneAsherRaney.com. If you go there, up at the top, there's About Me. There's the podcast button. There is the book button. There's a little background about radio. And there's a whole thing about the Beautiful Dying Expo and a children's book that I wrote years ago. You can either go there or just go on Apple Podcast. And, anybody that has their iPhone or their cell phone, just go wherever you listen to podcasts and just put in The Next Room with Jane Asher and it'll pull up. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on Google. It's on Empower Radio Network, which is my network that I broadcast. You can find it anywhere, seriously. And it'd be great. I'd absolutely love if you do like it. If you want to subscribe, then every Monday when I do a new podcast, it'll drop right down into your box. Well, you came on, you were so much fun. Such a good interview with you. It was lovely.
Yeah. And that will air, I think at the end of October.
Yes. That one's coming up.
End of October.
Yeah. Yep. I don't have the date right in front of me, but it's definitely going to be coming up. So it's a lot of fun. I love that podcast. And it's great because I just really get to meet interesting, intriguing people like yourself and just talk, and do this, talk about things that we're passionate about.
I love it. And I can't thank you enough to coming on the show today. It's been a pleasure to have you as a guest. And maybe you can come back, a bit later after your Death and Dying, the Beautiful Dying Expo is over and things calm down a bit. And we can go more into depth about the spiritual journey of writing a book with somebody in the spirit world.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I would love that. I would love that. Thank you so much for having me on. It really is a pleasure. And it's fun to be on this side of the microphone because I'm always the one asking the questions. So sorry if I got a little long-winded, but it was very exciting to be able to tell you all about it.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. To stay up to date on future episodes and to help us reach a larger audience, remember to subscribe, review, and share this podcast, as well as subscribing to my newsletter at divinespiritualessence.com. If you are a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com. My book, Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, which won first place in the category of spiritual leadership in August 2021 from Living Now Book Awards, is available online at Amazon as well as other online platforms worldwide. If you are a person who understands the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and would like to take one of my courses or work with me to create a path of healing your own life, please visit divinespiritualessence.com or drlottie.com.